As early as 8 years ago, Saudi Arabia launched an ambitious plan called Vision 2030. This plan aims to comprehensively improve the quality of education, expand manufacturing, and carry out large-scale construction in infrastructure and high-tech fields. 8 years have now passed since Saudi Arabia unveiled one of the most transformative national strategies in modern history. Known as Vision 2030, this comprehensive roadmap was designed to fundamentally reshape the kingdom's future, strengthening educational systems, diversifying industrial output, and launching massive infrastructure and technology initiatives that would reduce the nation's historic dependence on oil revenue. In this sweeping transformation, China has emerged as an indispensable partner. From the development of the Jazan Economic City's commercial port facilities to the engineering marvel of the Haramain high-speed rail network, Sino-Saudi cooperation has already produced remarkable achievements. Yet these accomplishments represent merely the opening chapter of a much larger story. Just recently, the two nations formalized another significant agreement, a partnership to construct 20,000 residential units in newly developed communities across Saudi Arabia. This latest deal, however, has triggered more than just economic headlines. As China deepens its economic and diplomatic engagement throughout the Middle East, Western powers are growing increasingly anxious about potential shifts in the region's geopolitical balance. In today's investigation, we'll examine China's strategic expansion in the Middle East and uncover the driving forces behind it. Why has Saudi Arabia chosen Chinese companies to deliver this massive housing initiative? What does this partnership reveal about changing global alliances? And what are the implications for Western influence in one of the world's most strategically vital regions? If you find value in our documentary-style analysis, please subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Now, let's dive into the details. Saudi Arabia stands as the Middle East's economic powerhouse, home to over 36 million people and sitting atop oil reserves that approach 40 billion tons. In 2023 alone, the kingdom pumped approximately 600 million tons of crude oil, representing 15.2% of global production, second only to the United States. But here's the challenge. As the global economy evolves and the world's energy landscape transforms, dependence on a single commodity has become increasingly risky. Nations and corporations worldwide are pursuing sustainable alternatives, and for oil-dependent economies like Saudi Arabia, diversification isn't just desirable, it's essential for survival. This reality gave birth to Vision 2030, announced in 2016 by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Far more than a simple economic adjustment, this blueprint aims to fundamentally reimagine Saudi society, economically, socially, and culturally, while reducing the kingdom's reliance on petroleum exports. What makes this particularly significant is China's role in the equation. China has become Saudi Arabia's largest trading partner, and their economic relationship has grown exceptionally strong over the past decade. Saudi Arabia was among the first Middle Eastern nations to embrace China's Belt and Road Initiative, recognizing early the potential benefits of this vast infrastructure and connectivity network. To support Vision 2030's ambitious objectives, China has actively contributed to Saudi Arabia's industrialization efforts, helping the kingdom build a more diversified economic foundation. Among the most prominent examples is the Red Sea project, a centerpiece of Vision 2030 that deserves closer examination. Spanning an enormous 28,000 square kilometers along Saudi Arabia's western coast, the Red Sea project represents the first comprehensive mega-development that Chinese companies have undertaken in the kingdom. Its significance to Saudi Arabia's economic transformation cannot be overstated. When fully operational, project planners anticipate the Red Sea destination will attract 1 million visitors annually, both domestic and international tourists. This influx would generate substantial revenue streams beyond oil, creating jobs and stimulating sectors from hospitality to retail, from entertainment to environmental conservation. The project embodies Vision 2030's core philosophy, building an economy that doesn't rise and fall with petroleum prices, but instead draws strength from multiple sectors and revenue sources. Another landmark achievement in Sino-Saudi cooperation materialized in 2018, when Saudi Arabia contracted Chinese firms to construct the Haramain high-speed railway. With a price tag of $8.3 billion, this project connects two of Islam's holiest cities, Mecca and Medina, locations of profound religious significance to nearly 2 billion Muslims worldwide. The engineering specifications are impressive. The railway stretches 450 kilometers across challenging desert terrain, designed to reach speeds of 360 kilometers per hour. It holds the distinction of being the world's first double-track electrified high-speed rail system built across desert conditions and among the fastest anywhere on Earth. The practical impact has been transformative. A journey that once consumed 4 grueling hours by road now takes just 2 hours by rail. For the millions of pilgrims who travel to these sacred sites annually, especially during Hajj and Ramadan, this represents not merely convenience, but a fundamental improvement in their spiritual journey. Vision 2030 – Progress Beyond Expectations. So, how is Vision 2030 actually performing? Well, the numbers tell an encouraging story. According to the Kingdom's official progress reports, 87% of the 1,064 initiatives planned for implementation by 2023 have either been completed or are advancing on schedule. Even more remarkably, 81% of projects have achieved their third-level performance indicators, while 105 specific metrics have exceeded targets originally set for 2025. This rate of progress has surprised many international observers who, at first, viewed Vision 2030 with skepticism, questioning whether such ambitious goals were realistic. The $2.5 billion housing agreement. Let's talk about the details and implications. Against this backdrop of sustained momentum, Saudi Arabia and China have now formalized a new partnership valued at $2.5 billion. An agreement focused on constructing 20,000 new residential units across the kingdom. This initiative directly supports Vision 2030's housing objectives, which aim to increase home ownership rates among Saudi citizens while attracting international investment and expertise to the domestic real estate sector. The agreement was formally signed in May 2024 during an official visit to China by Saudi Arabia's Minister of Municipal and Rural Affairs and Housing. The contract assigns responsibility to two key players. On the Saudi side, the National Housing Company, and from China, the China Machinery Engineering Corporation. CMEC's scope is comprehensive. The company will handle everything from initial design and material procurement to construction and post-completion defect remediation. This turnkey approach ensures accountability and really streamlines project delivery. But the partnership extends beyond just building homes. The agreement also includes establishing an industrial city within Saudi Arabia, comprising 12 manufacturing facilities and a dedicated building materials logistics zone. This infrastructure will support CMEC's supply chain, ensuring materials are produced locally, reducing costs, and creating Saudi jobs. According to engineering specifications, the new residential developments will cover 1.5 million square meters of built area. Groundbreaking is scheduled for 2025, with full project completion targeted for 2027. Importantly, these aren't isolated housing blocks. The developments will integrate essential infrastructure including medical facilities, power generation systems, water and electrical grids, telecommunications networks, educational institutions, and retail centers. The goal is creating complete, livable communities rather than just residential construction. Once finished, these developments will directly improve living conditions for approximately 100,000 Saudi residents, providing modern, comfortable, safe, and well-connected living spaces that meet contemporary standards. Economic impact. It goes well beyond bricks and mortar. The strategic partnership between Saudi Arabia and China delivers benefits that ripple far beyond the construction sites themselves. For Saudi Arabia's real estate market, Chinese involvement brings fresh capital, advanced construction techniques, and accelerated project timelines. For Saudi citizens, it means more affordable housing options, addressing a critical social need. And for the kingdom's economy, it contributes to non-petroleum GDP growth, exactly what Vision 2030 envisions. Consider the numbers. The real estate sector contributes 12.1% to Saudi Arabia's economy, while construction and building activities add another 11.2%. Together, these sectors represent nearly a quarter of economic output, a massive portion that really demonstrates why housing and infrastructure development are so central to national strategy. The National Housing Company, one of the Middle East's largest real estate developers, has set ambitious targets. By the end of 2026, NHC plans to develop 9 comprehensive residential communities and deliver 300,000 new homes. This would push Saudi household home ownership rates to 70%, a significant increase that builds middle-class wealth and economic stability. The partnership with CMEC opens doors for collaboration with numerous local manufacturers and suppliers, creating business opportunities throughout the value chain. It also enables NHC and its affiliated entities to attract and evaluate top-tier service providers, raising standards across the sector. This cooperation model demonstrates how China and Saudi Arabia are achieving deep integration in real estate and infrastructure, not just through capital flows, but through technology transfer, knowledge sharing, and resource optimization. Saudi Arabia has, since the launch of Vision 2030 back in 2016, really transformed into what is now the world's most active construction zone. The kingdom has committed 4.13 trillion Saudi riyals, so that's about 1.1 trillion US dollars, to infrastructure and real estate development. Just to put that number in perspective, it's roughly equivalent to Indonesia's entire annual GDP, and all of it is being invested into building and upgrading the physical foundations of Saudi society. China has, time and again, proven its value in this massive undertaking. Chinese companies have shown exceptional technical capabilities in infrastructure development, and, political relations between Beijing and Riyadh have strengthened considerably, especially in sectors that line up with the Belt and Road Initiative, like energy, water management, environmental protection, agriculture, infrastructure, transportation, industrial engineering, and telecommunications. Chinese firms have delivered numerous high-quality projects. For Chinese companies, the Saudi market represents significant growth opportunities in a stable and well-funded environment. And for Saudi Arabia, these Chinese partnerships offer efficiency, competitive pricing, and of course, proven expertise. Both sides benefit, and their strategic relationship just keeps getting deeper. But not everyone views these developments positively. For the United States and its Western allies, the strengthening Sino-Saudi relationship represents a strategic challenge, even a potential threat. Why the anxiety? Well, several factors are at play. China's Middle Eastern influence has grown dramatically in recent years. As early as 2022, Saudi Arabia became China's largest single source of crude oil imports. Simultaneously, China became Saudi Arabia's biggest trading partner. In that same year, bilateral trade between the two nations reached $116 billion, a year-over-year increase of nearly 33%. To understand the significance, compare that figure to U.S.-Saudi trade, which totaled considerably less. This gap illustrates a fundamental shift. China's economic influence in the Middle East is expanding rapidly, while Western economic dominance is gradually eroding. Saudi Arabia occupies a uniquely strategic position in the Middle East, geographically, economically, religiously, and politically. Its deepening cooperation with China naturally amplifies Chinese influence throughout this critical region. For decades, the United States and its allies maintained dominant positions in the Middle East, secured through military presence, arms sales, diplomatic relationships, and energy partnerships. The growing China-Saudi relationship challenges this established order and potentially affects Western interests across multiple domains. Furthermore, through the Belt and Road Initiative, China has established extensive economic connections with Saudi Arabia and numerous other participating nations through technology exports, infrastructure investments, and financial integration. For Western businesses, this means intensified competition for contracts, market share, and strategic partnerships. China's advantages, high efficiency, lower costs, rapid project delivery, have made Chinese firms formidably competitive in infrastructure and industrial engineering sectors. However, I would argue that Western anxieties about Sino-Saudi cooperation may be somewhat misplaced. The strategic partnership between China and Saudi Arabia is fundamentally based on principles of equality and mutual benefit. These are sovereign nations making independent choices about their economic futures based on their own interests and assessments. The success or failure of their cooperation depends on the genuine value it creates for both parties, not on the approval or interference of third countries, regardless of their historical influence in the region. If Western nations wish to remain competitive and influential in the Middle East, the solution isn't opposing partnerships between other countries. Instead, it requires offering Middle Eastern nations compelling value propositions of their own. Competitive pricing, advanced technology, reliable delivery, and genuine respect for their development priorities and national sovereignty. Strategic planning based on Middle Eastern countries' actual needs, rather than solely on Western strategic interests, would be far more effective than expressing concerns about other nations' economic cooperation. What we're witnessing isn't simply about construction contracts or trade volumes. It represents a fundamental reconfiguration of global economic relationships. For much of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the Middle East's international partnerships were largely defined by Western powers, particularly the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. Energy relationships, security arrangements, and economic development were conducted primarily within this framework. But the world has changed. Emerging economies, particularly China and India, have become major global players with substantial resources and capabilities to offer. Middle Eastern nations are pragmatically diversifying their partnerships, seeking the best terms and most beneficial arrangements from a wider array of potential partners. This doesn't necessarily mean abandoning existing relationships, but rather expanding options and creating competitive dynamics that can work to their advantage. Saudi Arabia's approach exemplifies this pragmatic strategy. The kingdom maintains its long-standing security partnership with the United States, while simultaneously deepening economic cooperation with China. It's pursuing relationships with European nations, Asian tigers, and emerging African economies. This diversified approach reduces dependence on any single partner and creates more resilient economic foundations. The 20,000-unit housing project, the Haramain Railway, the Red Sea development, these are more than construction projects. They're symbols of a shifting global landscape where economic partnerships are increasingly determined by practical benefits rather than historical allegiances or ideological alignments. For Saudi Arabia, Vision 2030 represents an existential transformation, an ambitious attempt to build a diversified, modern economy before oil's global dominance inevitably wanes. Chinese partnership has proven valuable in pursuing these goals, offering efficiency, expertise, and substantial capital. For China, deeper Middle Eastern engagement supports its own strategic objectives, securing energy supplies, expanding markets for Chinese companies, and building the connectivity networks that the Belt and Road Initiative envisions. For Western powers, this evolving reality presents both challenges and opportunities. The challenge is accepting that exclusive influence in strategically important regions may no longer be sustainable or even desirable in an increasingly multipolar world. The opportunity is demonstrating that Western partnerships can still offer unique value, whether through technological innovation, institutional expertise, or genuine collaborative approaches. As we watch these massive construction projects rise from the Saudi desert, we're witnessing more than physical transformation. We're seeing the architecture of 21st century global relationships taking shape, relationships built not on historical dominance, but on mutual benefit, not on imposed arrangements, but on freely chosen partnerships. The question isn't whether Western nations should worry about China's Middle Eastern expansion. The question is whether all parties, Western, Eastern, and Middle Eastern, can navigate this transition toward a more balanced, multipolar global system that serves everyone's long-term interests. In a world of finite resources and shared challenges, from climate change to economic stability, perhaps the real opportunity lies not in competing for exclusive influence, but in finding ways to collaborate for common prosperity. That's the deeper story behind the headlines about housing projects and railway lines. And it's a story that will continue unfolding in the years ahead.